Hello, viewers. My name is Blessing, and this is Food Safety and Food Security TV. Today, I am really happy to have a distinguished man, a very important person on this program. He is a chartered accountant, a pastor, a writer, and an entrepreneur. And he is the president of African Leadership Group. I'm sure he's going to be telling more about that. And he is no other than Pastor Ituah Ighodalo. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Blessing. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Pastor Ituah, to Food Safety and Food Security TV. Okay, so there's this thing I always think about you. You're a man with many hats. And I always wonder, how are you able to cope with all the things that you do? I'd like to learn, and I'm sure that our viewers will be able to learn a thing or two about having so many things to do, and then you're able to cope. What's the secret behind that, sir?
Well, there's no secret other than you do what you have to do. And I think you just do things. I think what you are trying to say, or what the issue is the diversity of the different kinds of things that I do. Most people, they focus on one or two areas and they do those things. But I do different things. So it's more the diversity that's the issue, not doing things. You do
Okay.
what you need to do. And you have 24 hours in a day to do what you need to do. So for me, everything I do, and hopefully most of them I do quite well, are things that I like to do, things I enjoy doing. And every day is an activity. So I just do what I need to do in the context of that day. So it's not a problem to me. It's just waking up and doing. You plan your day and you do.
Okay. Plan your day. That was actually what I was looking for because, like, okay, yeah. So you plan your day and you're able to accomplish everything that you need to do. Okay. And the second question I like to talk about African Leadership Group.
Hmm.
You're doing a lot in that area, and I think what you're doing is very applaudable.
Thank
And
you.
please, can you tell us more about that?
Well, even as a child, in my youth, I was less than 10 when I began to be interested in the affairs of Nigeria, and concern for people and development of society. My mother was a civil servant, a permanent secretary, the first woman permanent secretary in Nigeria.
Oh
And
wow.
therefore, I was exposed to government and governance at a young age, spending time in her office, going on tours with her, seeing the things we were doing. So I've always been passionate about Nigeria, passionate about people, passionate about developing people, passionate about developing resource, passionate about making Nigeria an El Dorado, a beautiful place. And when I grew older, I knew that Nigeria's problem was also Africa's problem, and
Absolutely.
that if we can liberate the continent of Africa, the world will be a better place. So I'm an advocate for good governance. I'm an advocate for better society. I'm an advocate for emancipation of the poor and the needy, and so on and so forth. And that's what gave birth to the African Leadership Group, mainly to find good and right leadership for the African continent, starting from our Jerusalem, which is Nigeria.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I don't think a lot of people know how AGL works. So I think that this is an opportunity to let people know.
Very good, and thank you. African leadership groups has about five areas in which it works. First of all, is the conversation, which you are aware of, which happens every Thursday at 5 o'clock. Okay,
On Zoom.
West African time
Yeah.
on Zoom, and that conversation is to achieve knowing what people are thinking, educating people about Nigeria, and also harvesting a group of people who will be available to serve Nigeria at a certain time and getting ideas that can be given to government in what we call our green book, green for the flag of Nigeria. So that's the conversation, understanding Africa and Nigeria better. So we have a Ghana series, we have a Kenya series. Hopefully, we're going to start a South African series and do another series for North Africa. And then we'll be able to cover Africa. And as many countries as are interested will get on that series of the Nigerian Leadership Series of the African Leadership Group. Okay, so that's that. Then we have um, what we call engagement of the people in the community. We call it community engagement.
Okay.
And that is to talk to them, to orientate them, to tell them how to recognize good and bad leadership
Okay.
and what citizens' rights are and what they need to do about that. Then we have the School of Leadership and Government, the SOLAG, which is meant for people who want to go into political leadership primarily. What do they need to do? How do they need to do it? What should their thinking be? How can they be successful politicians and successful political leaders and successful leaders? So that's the School of Leadership and Development. Then we have the youth engagement, which goes around schools, youth call camps, and things like that, doing more or less what the community engagement is doing. Then we have the fund, feed a person, feed a nation. That's just to do practical community interventions, especially in the area of food. But we also do boreholes, we do schools, anything that will make a community better, to support government, to show and tell that people can do things properly. So that is the nutshell. This is what the African Leadership Group is all about. Then we're going to be having the leadership awards at some stage to recognize good leadership and to call out not so good leadership.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So now, viewers, you know about African Leadership Group, the African Leadership Series. So watch out for it on social media. If you follow Pastor Ituah on the social media handles, you know about that. Now to the crux of the matter today. Um, Leadership, part of good leadership is to ensure that there is food security. And then globally, there is a concern about food security. And I'd like you to proffer some solutions. What are some of the solutions you think can help Nigeria, Africa, and the world at large to overcome food security issues?
To be honest, between you and I, there should be nothing like food insecurity. And anybody who knows me and has heard me speak before will say that if I were president of Nigeria, the first thing that I would tackle is agriculture, to make sure that we can feed ourselves in Nigeria with Nigerian food, and we would eat what we can grow and grow what we can eat. There should be no food insecurity because um, there's enough food all over the world, and there's enough possibilities of cultivating food.
Like I've heard you say that one thing that Africans do, we grow cocoa here in Nigeria, in Africa, but when we travel abroad, we allow them to come and buy our cocoa, and then we go abroad and buy chocolates and come back. I've heard you talk about that a number of times, a few times.
I think it's an irony, and I think it's part of the shackles of colonialism and slavery and slave mentality. And that's one of the reasons why we give birth to African Leadership Group, why African leaders cannot wake up to emancipate themselves and free themselves from the shackles of colonialism. The reasons are very simple. Number one reason among African leaders is ignorance. A lot of them are a bit ignorant. They really shouldn't be in the positions where they're in. The number two reason is greed and selfishness. A lot of them are very selfish. You know, Yorubas call it the eye that has not seen wealth before.
Absolutely.
So when they get to where there's wealth and power, they get carried away with wealth and power and not know the real reason why they're there. And the third is corruption, which is related to the second. And that is why Africa is suffering, because you have a set of leaders that are selfish, a set of leaders that have not seen wealth before. So they are overwhelmed by wealth and power. And a set of leaders that are extremely corrupt. The other reason is, of course, they're not visionary in terms of what should a leadership vision be, because they are largely unprepared for leadership and they don't understand that a leader is first and foremost a servant to serve the people. And that is why there's food insecurity in Africa, especially. In the UK and in the Western world, why there's food insecurity is also colonial domination and what you call over capitalism. Okay, so people in America will grow so much food, and they'll rather maintain their food, destroy some, do this, rather than carry that food and just simply take it to where there's no food and feed the people. Because as much food as there is food insecurity, there's also a lot of food waste.
Absolutely.
There's an immense amount of food waste. So what you need really is not struggling with food insecurity. It's just food redistribution of food and so on and so forth. But capitalism, wanting to over profiteer, does not allow the people who produce food to want to willingly either sell the food at much cheaper or even give out the food that they don't need, and so on and so forth. All I know is that my